to another History's Calling. Where will it take you? Today we are meeting with Abraham Driggs, a current student here in the history department, and he's already made some plans for after graduation and just has really had a great experience here at BYU as far as networking and building his career up to be where he wants it to be after graduation. And so we're going to talk a little bit about him today and have him just tell us about his experience here at BYU and be able to let you guys know of some of the other options that are available to you as history students. Once again, just trying to broaden your ideas of all the different things that are out there and possibilities and options that are available to all of the history students. And Abraham is a great example of that. So thanks for joining us today, Abraham.
Yeah, well, I don't know about a great example, but I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Arnie, Lindsay, and Allison for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, wonderful to have you. We want to start a little bit this morning by having you tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us why you decided to be a BYU history major, and tell us how you decided to focus on being in the financial service industry.
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone, I'm Abraham. I'm from Salt Lake City originally. So I was born in Washington, D.C., moved here when I was 5. I mean, I didn't personally move here. My parents moved me here. But I went to Skyline High School, and my love for history kind of came in high school. I think, as with many professions or people who choose to go into something in college, they've had wonderful teachers along the way, wonderful women and men that have helped inspire that in them. So I had some great history professors in high school, and tried to take as many, AP World, AP History, all those courses. It's hard, especially from Utah, trying to get into BYU. You try to take as many courses as you can. And the one subject that really interested me was history. I didn't think about majoring in history, but I liked it, and I would go to museums growing up. And so a little bit about me, my family, my parents are both history majors in college. So my dad got an undergrad in history, and then a master's in international relations, and now he's a financial advisor. My mom got an undergraduate in Chinese history, a master's in public health, and then a Juris Doctorate to become a lawyer. So in my family, I was always taught that you should study the liberal arts, and that doesn't necessarily need to translate to something in that field. While that's all well and good, you can go into academics, and so I was kind of raised in that environment. And so that about me. I came to BYU. I'm very lucky to get in. We were very blessed here at Brigham Young University to have a fantastic education, and it's very highly subsidized, which is, I mean, to get this education anywhere else, we're really, really lucky. So God bless all the tithing payers and the people that the church that supports the university. It really gives us a great opportunity. So very blessed to be here. Anyway, sorry, I'm droning on. I my freshman year didn't know what I wanted to study. As with most people, I was undecided. I didn't understand the people who knew what they wanted to do. Like, that was insane. Like, what do you want to do? It's like, oh, I'm a neuroscience major. That didn't compute with me, because having that like knowledge of oneself at age 18 to like know what they want to do. I still don't know what I want to do. I have some idea, but so I went on my mission. I served in Thailand and Laos and Southeast Asia, came back from my mission, was very stressed because everyone always kept asking, what are you going to major in, parents, colleagues. And so I went to a career services counselor. I wish I would have gone to Arnie. I didn't go to Arnie, but I went to the career studio in the Wilkinson Center, sat down with an advisor, and he asked me like what I like to do in high school, that kind of thing. And he said, it sounds like you're stressed and you just want to pick something. So why don't we try picking a major? And I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you could like switch majors. So he said, let's just try out history. Try it on for size for a semester. We'll take these 2 courses and see if you hate it or love it. I was like, great. I walked out of the room and people asked, what are you studying? I was like, I'm studying history, And that was important for me to have something to identify with, as silly as that sounds. But I started studying history and loved the classes: History 200, History 221, American Heritage. Fantastic. I remembered a little bit why I took so many courses in high school in history. And anyway, I loved studying history. And then to answer the second part of your question, sorry, this is droning on here, but with the financial services industry, my dad grew up as he's a financial advisor. And so I would intern at his office and run errands for him and talk with his clients. And so that had always been something that had interested me, because as we'll talk about, history doesn't translate to being a professor or going to law school, which I think most people would say, what are you going to do? And so we can talk about that later, but that's kind of where I had the love for finance was from my dad.
I love how your parents made it okay for you to be a liberal arts major and, made you comfortable with that. I feel like so many of our students struggle to be able to, I'm going to study this anyway, even though my parents are wondering what I'm going to do with this later. So I think that's really important that you had, that foundation there from home. So that's pretty amazing. So you got the financial service industry kind of from your family as well, being able to see your dad be able to do that. But having their support helped you connect that a little bit, maybe, to be able to know that you could be a history major and be able to connect that still.
Yeah, I mean, as human beings, we take what we know and the people around us, and we say, we're inspired by those around us. And if my parents could do it, I felt like, well, maybe I can do it too. And they were always encouraging and still are. And along with that, I had very great professors. I just have great professors at BYU, and history is such a great field because it's so open and so broad. And so, I talk to these professors and they wouldn't try to steer me towards academia. They would just say, what are your interests? And so my parents, along with professors, have been really, really helpful.
Okay, so tell me a little bit how now that you've kind of gone through the history program, you're getting close to graduating and being done, and you've done it, been there. Tell me how you feel like this financial services and being, wanting to focus on that financial aspect. How did that relate at all to that? Or how could you see a connection, I guess, within that? And yeah.
How did that equip you for what you're doing now?
Yeah. Well, so you'll hear a lot of professionals, at least in the finance world, they'll tell you that you can study whatever you want and go into finance. But when you ask them what their major is, it's always accounting, finance, econ, right? And so you're like, are you really putting your money where the mouth is? But I had a couple experiences with history that, and with companies coming to BYU and recruiting from BYU from the humanities majors. I remember Goldman Sachs coming when I was a sophomore, which is an investment bank headquartered out of New York, and they have a large office here in Salt Lake City. And they came to recruit humanities majors, and they gave a spiel kind of saying, look, maybe 70% of our talent pool is from information systems and finance and consulting and those kind of majors. However, we like to inspire diversity, and diversity doesn't just come from race or gender, both of which I am the majority, right? So that's tough. But we like diversity of thought, right? And so someone who was interested in the financial services, but realized that I had certain limitations, and I'm just saying, frankly, like I'm a white male, right? I'm a white Christian male going into banking. Like you don't get diversity from that, right? And so I thought, how can I approach the industry in a way that would be unique? And how can I ask my professors and people within the banking industry how to get there with communication skills, with interviews, in addition to using the history of banking to pitch myself and to pitch the historicity of finance and the continuity of how the stock market works and that kind of stuff to bridge that gap. And so I had some great mentors at various banks, and including BYU, and some professors that experiential learning, which I'm sure we'll get into, which helped me do that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes. I love how you said looking into like the history of banking,
Yeah.
too, there's a lot that goes into that as well. So that's a pretty interesting concept to be looking into.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit now about the experiential learning and about how you feel like what you've done as far as experiential learning to help, add tools to your toolkit and prepare you for this upcoming career.
Sure. Well, I think first of all, it's important to note that I'm 24, turning 25 in a month here. I'm very young. Most in college, it's not as if, at least for me, you don't know what you're going to do, especially with millennials and Gen Z. Like you hear that people bounce around a lot in their 20s and 30s. And so to have this set course of life, I think is rather, it's rather mundane. Like it doesn't fit with the culture that I've grown up in. And so getting as many different experiences as possible was very important in understanding most importantly, what I did not want to do. And then finding what I did want to do, I think was helpful. So with experiential learning, I would include internships in that, and we'll talk about some of those. But the experiential learning department there, Allison, you helped me out with a couple of years ago. The experiential learning department there for the history, and I'm sure they have this with other departments as well. But it allows you to take what you want to do, or take an idea that you have for a study project, and it pairs you with a professor that's willing to mentor you through that project. It could be anything. And for me, it was, I wanted to nail an interview with a certain bank, and I wanted to know that bank inside and out from the history in order to be a attractive applicant. So I teamed up with Dr. Mark Choate, and I had TA'd for him previously, and he's a dear friend and wonderful professor. And I basically went to him and said, hey, if you were me, what would you do? And so he said, there's this experiential learning thing that you can check out. And so I talked to you, Allison, and we set up kind of like, would I write a paper? What research would I do? And with Dr. Choate, he recommended like 5 books: the history of Bank of America, history of Wells Fargo, history of American Express, those kind of like big books. And I would plow through those, and we would talk about them every week or so. And then for my interview, I was able to articulate why I studied history in a way that spoke to the financial world, that said, hey, I don't just study Mao Zedong or Stalin or Roosevelt or Marx. I can, which are all applicable in their own way, but for these people, in the way that their minds thought, said, well, if we talk about finance as an evolution, I feel like I have those skills, and hopefully can be an asset to the team. But anyway, it ended up working out really well. But other internships, I interned for a software company, and I designed a board game for them, like completely random, super fun. I love board games. I'm very into strategy. I worked at a couple of financial advisory firms, just as an intern that, got coffee basically to learn some lingo there. And so with all that together, and with professors and parents that helped, I was able to land an internship and then get a full-time offer, luckily. So
I had a follow-up, Abraham. I'm so excited to hear this because, as you know, we are the experiential learning advocates for the university. And so, but one thing that I've noticed, I teach a career development class. It's my side hustle for BYU Idaho. And one thing that I noticed that a lot of my students had a hard time with was digging into the organization. And from what I'm hearing, it sounds to me like your history degree allowed you to ask the right questions to know where you needed to go to find information about an organization. Because I think half of your interview, you have to know a lot about the mission, the values,
Right.
What a day-to-day looks like. And so what I'm hearing from you is that history gave you the opportunity to ask the right questions. I don't know. Am I reading into that a little bit?
Oh, no, you're completely right. History is all about looking into different biases, taking the primary sources. And so if you can weave those in a way that speaks to your audience effectively and to be able to ask those right questions, you're totally right. Another thing that helped, if I may, was a career services person recommended that I look on LinkedIn. That's for the business world, is very big. So on LinkedIn, you can look up, you can do a Boolean search phrase for people who are from BYU who work at certain companies, right? So for me, I wanted to go into banking, specifically into commercial banking is what I had decided on. And so there are big banks. You have Citigroup, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and JP Morgan Chase. And so I would look up BYU alum at each of these places, and then I would just cold call them. And most people aren't comfortable doing that. So, whether you're introverted, extroverted, I don't think it really matters. But if you just send them a quick message on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, I'm a fellow Cougar. I have questions. I have these 3 questions. It will take 5 minutes of your time. Are you willing to help me out?" And I probably got 70% of people that responded, which is really great. And so I got to know what their experience was. So I took all of, I maybe talked with 30 people or so from different banks, and then wrote all this information down, tried to synthesize it, would go to my professor. We would talk about the history, how we could, we would practice like interview questions and how to do those together. And then I would approach the interview. So we had some industry research and then some historical research in addition to that. And I think that's what helped me with that. But did that answer your question?
Oh yeah, that's awesome. I think that that's such an important connection to make for our history students, is the value of what this degree is providing them so that they can do the best when they're in a situation where an opportunity is right in front of them. So that's awesome. Thank you.
One thing that I really loved that you said was how these experiences helped you articulate what your history degree was giving you. Because I think so often the students are getting finished and they're getting through everything, but they don't know how to articulate what they just did to translate over into life experience. So you talked about a lot of resources that you've done, and you've really been proactive in making this happen for yourself. What advice would you give to students as far as recommending resources and things that, how did you get started with that? Or how did you know where to look? Or what would you say to students as far as finding the resources and being proactive like that?
Right. Well, I think sometimes at BYU, which has so many opportunities available, and any university for that matter, it's almost like what I call the Baskin-Robbins complex, where there are 36 flavors or whatever it is. And with the 36 flavors, it's hard to choose one because there are 36. However, these new chic companies that come out, Penguin Brothers or whatever, they got 3 things on the menu. Okay. It's very easy to choose from 3, or even vanilla or chocolate. There's not 36 different options. So I think as a student, you get overwhelmed with, there's business career services, there's career services, there's your own department career services. Then there are these counselors. Then then there's Handshake. Then there's LinkedIn, right? And there are 50 million flavors, and it's a little overwhelming. And so at the end of the day, trying to get one student to come into you and talk to you is probably very, difficult, but how can you approach them to where they're at? So I think if you have a vanilla or chocolate that you start at, right? And then dive a little bit deeper into maybe adding some Reese's into there. I think the career services for the department would be a great way to go, and talking with someone like Lindsay or Arnie, and then getting their advice, because you only need to start with one. You only need to start with vanilla or chocolate, and then you can get the add-ons. But the bottom line is that you don't know what you want to do until you know the options. But sometimes those options are so overwhelming that you don't even want to look into what you want to do, right? And so for me personally, in the business going into business as someone who's never I have a business minor, but other than that, never took a class in the Marriott School. It was the experiential learning with history. It was LinkedIn. It was using the connections that I already had by my parents' random friend that worked in banking, right? And then using him or her, not using, but they're willing to help you out. I think you know what I mean. And then career fairs were very helpful for me. It's not the same for everyone. You know, everyone doesn't like a grasshopper shake. Some prefer the strawberry. But I think for me, the LinkedIn, the alumni network, in addition to experiential learning and with the professors, and most importantly, with the LinkedIn people who were willing to plug for me within those companies, really made a difference. So I'm very grateful to them for those professionals. So.
And I'm so glad that you said that, because one thing that I tell my students is that I might not be the right mentor for you. Arnie and I might be saying the same thing, but he might approach it in a way that's totally different than me, and vice versa, and Allison as well. And so I like the idea of just start somewhere so that you know that there are a lot of other people out there who might speak the language that you need to hear in order for some things to start clicking. And that's the same for me, right? As I'm looking for mentors all the time to do what I'm doing better. So this isn't just like a college thing. This is a principle, right? And you're going to find that in your industry too. So I'm really glad that you said that. Thank you.
So Abraham, what are you most excited about finishing school and going on and starting this new career?
Well, I'm first of all grateful that I have a university education. That's not that shouldn't be taken lightly. So I'm very grateful that I have that. And I'm most excited in our life. I like to consider myself a lifelong learner. I wouldn't be going into an industry that's not in my career for any other reason. I think when I graduate, I'm working full time as a financial analyst for Wells Fargo Commercial Bank. And I'm most excited to learn the language of business, which is traditionally known as accounting, but learn the language of communication in business. And I'm very excited to do that. My wife is going into the field that I know nothing about. She's a neuroscience major, going to be a pediatric nurse practitioner, and the sciences are something I'm so bad at. And so I'm excited, looking forward after graduation to learn about her experience as she gets her doctorate and learning about the sciences in that sense. But I'm just really grateful to not to get all sappy here. I'm just really grateful for people like you and my professors who make and industry leaders who make BYU a place of learning and lifelong learning, because there are so many launch boards that we can take from BYU. And sometimes the trick is knowing where to look, but I think the biggest hurdle that we all have to face, and I've had to face, is starting, right? And so I'm grateful that we have people like you three who can help guide us in the right direction based on what we want to do. So God bless you all. It's I'm excited for the great adventure of the corporate world, for better or for worse, right?
Yes.
So Abraham, if you were to advise students, if you had students here instead of us,
Mm-hmm.
what would be kind of your most important advice that you could give to history students, or even students in general, that would prepare them to utilize their time better at BYU to get them geared up for a great job on the other side?
I think informational interviews would be the best thing to do, because you may, let's say you're inclined to be a dentist or something like that, right? You won't know if you want to be a dentist. You may have grown up sitting in the chair, but I think informational interviews just 5-10 minute things with BYU alums or with non-BYU alums. BYU alums is a little bit easier because you already have a connection through LinkedIn or through parents of your girlfriend or whatever it is. I think informational interviews, as many of those as you can do as possible, it will give you a much better flavor for that profession. And if you can go sit on some things and try an internship or even try job shadowing for 4 hours, you will know in the first 20 minutes if that's something you could do, right? Or is something that you wanted to do. So I think informational interviews is great. I was taught that in career explorations. I took a class. They taught me how to do the informational interview, how to ask the right questions of what do you like about your job? What do you not like about your job? And then the more sensitive questions, of course, if you're comfortable, can you tell me how much you make? Those kind of things, because knowing that information is very helpful in applying for jobs. If they want to go into something, they'll actually have the tools of saying, oh, well, I know that this is a problem in the dentist world, and that's something I want to try to combat when I go in. And I've talked with these dentists about it from these different states, and they've told me the same thing. I think that would be my biggest advice, would be informational interviews. You can't beat professionals in the field. Just can't do it.
It's true. And information is power.
Well, Abraham, we have loved having you today. I feel like any student who watches this and is going to get some definite direction on where to go as their history major, be able to take some of these resources and figure out what they want to do and be able to articulate, you know, what their experience is for them. And I love how you talked about going to, you know, the fairs, experiential learning, career directors, professors, you know, just so many things that you really were proactive and have been proactive in doing to be able to forge your own path. And I think that's just really important. So thank you for taking time to talk with us today. And we wish you the best of luck with graduation and moving on.
Thank you very much. It's all because of people like you that these things are possible. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Abraham.